What's up, college football fans? Noah Hiles, Andrew Destin here on the Post-Gazette Sports Now YouTube channel. Andrew, we got like a week left in the new year, and we're in the middle of bowl season. Most importantly, we are finally through National Signing Day. We made it through alive.
Yeah, I can't believe it. I mean, really, this was such a period. James Franklin, I think, put it best with his press conference yesterday of just that. I think it's a mutual feeling among all people that it's, not just the coaches, not just the reporters, it's the players too. When it ends, I think everybody's pretty happy that it's over because it is a headache. It is a lot to deal with, and it's an arms race for sure. But the teams that come out on top and get the guys they want, they're happy, and it's a big sigh of relief afterward because there's a lot that goes into this for sure.
Yeah, and honestly, just with how recruiting is changing, I don't know how many more of these national signing days we're going to see, especially like the early period or whatever, just because with the transfer portal changing things as much as really they've ever been changed as far as bringing in new talent to a program. I wouldn't be shocked in 5 years if guys could just sign after their junior season comes to an end. And I think that would probably actually make more sense because it's easier to construct a future roster knowing that, hey, this dude, you really will find out who's going to back out and who's not going to back out. And you could still back out, but I feel like signing still is just way more of a commitment than just saying something on Twitter. But nonetheless, very active signing day. We're going to break it all down now. Penn State, as always, a top 25 class. Pitt in that next 25 group, but a much larger group altogether for Pitt compared to years past. And we'll start off with the Nittany Lions, Andrew. I believe 15th on Rivals, 15th in the country. Go ahead, just break down that class by the numbers for us, please.
Yeah, numbers wise, looking at the 4 stars, you got 13 guys who are 4-star recruits, 10 that are 3 stars, as well as picking up a transfer portal guy in the Florida Atlantic punter Riley Thompson, a quarterback and a receiver in this class. They got a trio of linebackers as well, but really a focus, which it feels like it's been a huge focus for the last few recruiting class for the Nittany Lions, has been at tight end as well as on the line. They beefed up there on the offensive line. Their highest ranked guys are offensive linemen, as well as a couple of guys in that D line. So a lot of guys in that 4 to 3-star range, they weren't able to get true blue chips like they've been able to do in the last couple of years. You think about a name like a Micah Parsons or somebody like that. The closest one to that would be Javen Williams, who, depending on what recruiting website you look at, he is a 5-star, but according to Rivals.com, he's a 4. So pretty balanced recruiting class for Penn State. The only spot that you maybe look at is a little bit of a deficiency would be at that receiver spot. They got one guy there in Carmelo Taylor, a 3-star out of Roanoke, Virginia. And last year, they picked up 4 guys coming out of high school. They got a portal guy in Mitch Tinsley. So that was 5 receivers coming in, just 1 this year. So that's something that a lot of people have their eyes on. James Franklin has said he'd like to pick up at least 1, maybe 2 more receivers. I have a hunch it might be more than that, depending on what kind of exodus you see of guys putting themselves into the transfer portal to leave the program. Who knows on that front? But 13 4-stars, 10 3-star guys, and the quarterback is a 3-star guy in Jackson Smolik, and the receiver is as well in Carmelo Taylor.
First things first, Andrew. In the Noah Hiles recruit rankings, Williams is definitely a 5-star. That's yeah, and we talked about him on last week's show. I'll never forget it. Just seeing him warm up. I remember texting my dad just saying, like, this is what an SEC recruit looks like. Even though he didn't go SEC, he's got that size, and yeah, he should be a 5-star. He is one in my book. Pitt, on the other hand, 46th ranked recruiting class in the country by Rivals. 19 high school players, 3 players coming in additionally through the transfer portal. Of those 19 high school players, there's 1 4-star. That's Isaiah Neal, the defensive tackle. We'll talk more about him in a bit. 17 3-star players and 1 2-star. The notes on this one, you talk about balance. I mean, this is about as balanced as it can get. Out of the 22 players, 12 offense, 10 on defense. And the 2 biggest areas of need, in my opinion, were addressed. They got 3 new quarterbacks, 2 of them coming in through the portal with Phil Dracovic and Christian. How do you say his name?
Veyer.
Okay. Yeah, Christian Veyer from Penn State, both coming in from the transfer portal. And Ty Diefenbach, who's a 2-star quarterback recruit out of California. He was the guy that they got in replacement of Kenny Minchie when he decommitted. yeah, so they really rebuilt that quarterback room. And more importantly, on top of the quarterback room, they brought in 4 receivers. Receiver was by far the thinnest area of the roster entering signing day for Pitt. They had 2 guys leave through the transfer portal. We don't know Jared Wayne's future and if he's going to stick around. And even if he does, I mean, there's just not a lot of depth there. And while they'll have probably, if Wayne returns, they'll have all 3 starters coming back. They don't have a lot of guys really coming back behind them. And bringing in 4 3-star receivers allows you to really have that cushion where, sure, you have your Alstons, your Gavin Thompsons who can step in and be those rotational guys, but you can really start building a long-term chemistry with Bayer and all these young guys coming in who will be the next wave of offensive playmakers. So very balanced class. Another note that Pat Narduzzi made a point to make, and this just might be a way of saying, hey, this is a way we project that we did well, even though the rankings say we didn't do well. He talks about getting high character guys. 11 of the 19 high school players that came in this year for Pitt won some type of championship, with most of them winning state championships at one point in time in their high school career. And 10 of those 19 were captains. So, they're bringing in leaders. You're bringing in guys who understand what it takes to win, understands that commitment and buy-in. And when you're a program like Pitt, who can't land a 5-star in most seasons, who have struggles even bringing in a 4-star, you need those high character guys that are going to trust the process, that are really going to commit to redshirting and waiting their time and developing their talents, because you see what happens when they do have those guys who can stick around for a while and become a first-round draft pick quarterback or an All-American running back once they, get on the field and take their lumps and learn from it and grow. So that was Narduzzi's analysis on this class. And we'll get into it now by just talking about our personal favorites for both Penn State and Pitt. I'll go through mine real quick. For Pitt, I think the crown jewel of the class is, of course, the 1 4-star, Isaiah Neal, the defensive tackle out of Maryland, state champion. I just see this guy as Charlie Partridge's next project. They have probably an entire new defensive line starting this upcoming season or in 2023. And that's going to be looked at as the wave of guys where you're going to see your Elliott Donalds, your Sean Fitzsimmonses getting their first opportunities with the ones, these high-profile local guys getting their first chance to really show out. But then Isaiah Neal is going to be right in line behind them. And he might redshirt as a freshman like they did with Sean Fitzsimmons this year. But he's going to be ready to go, and he could probably end up being, the next in a long line of Pitt star defensive linemen who have a successful career in ACC play and hear their name called sometime in the NFL draft and make plays on Sundays. So he's a guy I have my eye on for sure. 2 other guys, Zion Fowler. He's one of the 4 receivers that Pitt brought in. I think he's probably, has the biggest upside, a guy out of Florida, originally committed to Pitt, then decommitted right after Kenny Minchie decommitted about a month ago. And then a day before signing day. So that would have been Tuesday night. He said it was always Pitt, and he stuck around. He signed, and out of the 4, I think that he probably has the highest ceiling. I'm excited to see what he can do next year with the Panthers and, years to come. And last but certainly not least, Pitt's final commitment of that class, Cruz Brookins out of Steel Valley. Biased, I guess you could say. I love when Whitfield guys commit to Pitt. I loved covering Whitfield football. And Pitt has a great history of bringing in local defensive backs and turning them into really good players. I mean, you look at Dane Jackson, you look at DeMar Hamlin, you look at MJ Devonshire right now, and I mean, bringing in Donovan McMillan through the transfer portal as well, who we'll talk about in a bit. You can even go back in history, guys, big names like Darrell Revis and Josh Lay and all of those guys. So he hopefully, for Pitt, Cruz Brookins could maybe be the next one. He had a really impressive year at Steel Valley. I love his athleticism and what he brings to the table. And, this was a kid who was a MAC recruit, a 2-star really, for most of his high school career, but a huge senior season allowed him to take that next level and have the final 3 of Cincinnati, Syracuse, and Pitt, 3 programs that I would say are quite above average, right on that second tier of the college football hierarchy, right knocking on the door to being on that top tier of a destination. So those are my 3 favorite players in this group out of high school. What about you, Andrew? Who do you like?
Love the love for the Whippeal guys. I could have matched you on that one with a couple of dudes here in the Penn
Yeah.
State class, but I'm going to stick with my three. First one, I've already brought him up, Jackson Smolik, the quarterback. I think he's a great story. I'm sure you've heard about his, Noah, but just a guy who was a total late bloomer, got hurt during his junior year of high school, and was a late invitation to the Elite 11 quarterback camp where he impressed a lot of people, got himself a scholarship offer from Tulane, committed there, and then switched gears and went over to Penn State, went to a camp at Penn State and performed well enough to earn himself a scholarship, which we never hear stories like that anymore. It's always the coaches going to the players, not the other way around. So
Right.
that was a little bit of a throwback one. Definitely excited about what he can do for that program, just from a standpoint of he's a project guy and everybody wants to talk about Drew Aller, and rightfully so. But Smolik's a guy that, to your point about Pitt, have him redshirt, give him a couple of years, see what he can develop into. Maybe he's a starting quarterback in 2-3 years' time. So he's somebody out of West Des Moines, Iowa, that's definitely worth keeping an eye out on. And it's another guy we talked about in the last podcast would be Matthias Mega Barnwell, large tight end at 6'6", I think about 255, 260, huge body, just somebody who, James Franklin said it yesterday, he sees him being able to play so many different positions, whether that's at tight end where they recruited him for and where they would, it seems like to start him at, or if they move an offensive line, or put him on the defensive side of the ball and have him be a defensive end or defensive tackle. He's a versatile guy. He's a big athlete. Athleticism is off the charts with him. He's somebody who, I don't know if I'd label him a project, but he's somebody that they can mold kind of like Play-Doh into whatever they want him to be, and that's always an exciting person for a recruiting class. And the last one for me is defensive end Mason Robinson. He was a guy that they picked up really late in the recruiting cycle, about a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, was committed to Northwestern for a long time. He's only a 3-star recruit. He's not as high profile as some of these other guys on the recruiting list, but he's a McDonough guy. It's a high school in the Maryland area that Penn State has recruited extremely well with a lot of success. Guys like PJ Musfer come to mind, Dennis Sutton. Now they keep that line going. And I think the reason the Mason Robinson one is so interesting to me is because not only is it good for Penn State to pick up his recruitment, but it continues that line. It continues this, hey, every year we're going to get whatever the guy out of McDonough, who the best player is, Penn State's going to go get him. That's more important for Penn State to keep that lineage going, that kind of recruiting trajectory. I think it's really important for the Nittany Lions if they want to continue to do well in the state of Maryland and really all those states. Pennsylvania, that was another note. I mean, they got 4 of the top 5 guys from the state of Pennsylvania, got 2 of the top 3 in the state of Virginia, and then there in Maryland getting a guy in Mason Robinson who maybe doesn't have the star power, but important from a note of that McDonough trajectory.
Crab cakes and football, baby. That's what Maryland does. You know that movie?
What's that?
You know that reference? You get that movie reference?
Can't say I do. I know
Wedding Crashers.
Wedding Crashers.
You ever see it?
Yeah, it's a long time ago
All
for
right,
me.
yeah, it's one of my favorite lines from any movie ever. But all right, so Andrew, as we wrap up here, obviously you never know what you're getting in these recruiting classes. 5-star or 1-star, things pan out different based on every individual. Some of these guys, we might be writing stories about them next year. Some of these guys, we might never write their name at all, aside from X left the program through the transfer portal at the end of next season. Just looking through, though, on a gut feeling, who is someone in this class, be it the one player through the transfer portal or anyone else through the high school level, who you think could have an immediate impact for the Nittany Lions in 2023?
I love me some special teams, and I'm going right there with the transfer punter out of Florida Atlantic, Riley Thompson. 45 yards per punt last year as a freshman at FAU, an Australian-born punter, and feels like every press conference this year, James Franklin would talk about, he would go through his list of these are key offensive guys, defensive guys on the other team. He would go to special teams, and he would always rave about the great punters that some of these Big Ten teams had, and it felt like more often than not, they were Aussie guys. And I think James Franklin is finally getting one of his own in Riley Thompson. So he's somebody who's exciting for 2 reasons. One, because he did have a really good season last year for Florida Atlantic, but also 2, they need some help there. Barney Amore is graduating after 6 years of eligibility, have run up for him of playing across 2 schools. Jordan Stout was somebody who, Steelers fans probably pretty familiar with now, being a Baltimore Raven, had a lot of success with the Nittany Lions across the board. They're looking to turn over the leaf to some younger guys, but maybe they're not ready for that yet. Maybe they're looking for some help through the portal. They're bringing in Riley Thompson to create competition. This is pretty darn exciting for the Nittany Lions from the standpoint of they might have another elite punter which if you go back to the early sanctions years of Penn State, special teams is one of their biggest weaknesses. And it seems like that's been a real cognizant effort to make that into a strength. If he can perform to the level that he did in his first year in college, that could bode really well for the Nittany Lions to have somebody like that to lean upon. Whether it's him, whether it's Alex Paqueta, the young punter, one of those guys is going to win the job. But the point is, it's not going to be just handed to Paqueta, which a lot of people had kind of assumed. So this one definitely caught me by surprise, but it's an interesting one. We'll see how everything plays out in University Park.
All right. And as for Pitt, I mean, listen, I have no rooting interest aside from what I can gain from, Pitt athletics doing well. And there's little that Pitt can do to generate more excitement than bringing in a high profile local player. And they have one on both sides of the ball next year that will be newcomers. And that's Phil Jakovic starting on the offense at quarterback and Donovan McMillan likely starting at one of those two safety positions, which are both going to be open now that Eric Hallett and Brendan Hill are going to the NFL, are going to, at least try to go to the NFL. So I just think that both of these guys are going to have the opportunity to be possibly the two most important players on their side of the football. I think that Pitt's defense will have other guys returning that can have a bigger impact, but in Pat Narduzzi's defense, safeties are so important. Just because they're really the only people who can provide any sort of help past that first line of defense. And while they have two of the three starting linebackers returning along with Brandon George, who missed a lot of time this year, but he got an injury redshirt, so he'll be back. Their linebacking corps should be strong, and the secondary should be strong at the corner positions, which is great, but they need one of those two safeties to fill in and be that DeMar Hamlin, to be that Eric Hallett. And Donovan McMillan has the tools to play on that level, and that's saying a lot because I just named two names. One was an All-American, and the other is starting for the Buffalo Bills right now. And that's a lot of pressure to fill those shoes, but that's why he signed up to come play here, coming from Florida. And he has a chance to come back to his hometown team and really be a key piece on a defense who will need him to play well if he does earn that starting role there at one of the two safety spots. And then, of course, on the other side of the ball, I mean, Phil Jakovic, this is a guy Pitt fans have been wanting to be the Pitt quarterback since he was like in ninth grade. I mean, he was the highest rated quarterback recruit in an area known for producing great quarterbacks. And he upset a lot of Pitt fans when he went to Notre Dame. And then when he transferred from Notre Dame and went to Boston College, it was kind of double heartbreak. It's like, why not us? But now Pitt fans, they finally got their guy. And this is a guy that not only the fans wanted, but the coaching staff really wanted. Narduzzi admitted during his press conference Wednesday, he said, look, we were interested in Phil even when Keaton was still on our roster. Before he made his decision to go into the portal, yeah, we had some interest in him because of the history with Cignetti and because of what Jakovic has shown the ability to do when healthy. How do you not have a little bit of interest? And knowing, kind of how Keaton Slovis did hold this team back a little bit, an addition at quarterback could go a long way. So they got their guy. They got their guy they want at quarterback, and they've got a playmaker in the secondary who can make a big difference. Really excited to see how those two, local kids can come plug themselves in and try to make an impact, because Pitt's going to need big production from both of those spots if it hopes to, keep building towards something as it's been doing in the last couple of seasons. So, Andrew, any final notes here as we wrap up the show?
Recruiting season sure is an exciting one. Looking forward to turning it over to bowl season, though, for both of our teams. Definitely going to be excited for the Rose Bowl and the Sun Bowl.
All right. Well, Andrew, thanks as always. Hope you and yours have a wonderful holiday season. Happy holidays to everyone who was tuning in throughout all of this. Keep tuning in, though. We'll have our bowl previews next show. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you for checking out this content from Post-Gazette Sports. If you liked the video, please like it and subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you enjoyed it on Apple Podcasts, please rate us 5 stars on Apple Podcasts. For 6 months of digital access to post-gazette.com for just $6, click the link down in the description.